VR Forum Videos. I'm Peter Lojak. We are continuing our college football off-season coverage right now with Steve from collegefootballwinning.com. We've been doing individual team previews with Steve all season long, and Steve, of course, is a professional handicapper who only does college football. Steve, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me back, Peter.
All right. Right now, we're going to take a look at Florida, the Florida Gators. Now, this is a team that had me a little bit confused last year, and then some years they are a legitimate BCS challenger. Some years they're more flawed than that. At Pinnacle right now, their odds to win the BCS are 25-1, and that has them tied with three other teams for 11th place. So that's pretty good. Not quite top 10, though. Steve, what are your prospects for Florida this year?
So starting with how we think Florida is going to do against the spread. You know this from talking with me for going on 3 years now. We are quantitative analysts here, so we like to use our numbers and statistics a lot here at collegefootballwinning.com. And Florida is a team that pretty much defies a lot of our predictive against the spread statistics for the season. For example, one of the things we look at when predicting a team's against the spread prospects for an upcoming season is we try to assess their variation in straight up wins from the previous season. And usually if they can increase their straight up wins, they have a good chance of improving on their against the spread record. Well, not for Florida. In 2 out of 3 of Florida's best against the spread seasons, that happened when they had fewer straight up wins when compared to the previous season. Another metric we like to look at is their preseason ranking. That's a good indication of expectations for a team going into the season. And typically, the lower the expectations, the more likely it is that they can have a good against the spread season. Well, Florida's 3 best against the spread years in the last 10 have been when the Gators were ranked in the preseason top 11. And in fact, of the last 10 years, Florida has been an AP preseason top 6 team 4 different times, and they had profitable against the spread years all 4 of those times. So you can throw that predictive category out. And then finally, one of the things we like to look at too is did they have some sort of an extreme against the spread season the year before? Or if it was profitable, very profitable, then we expect to sort of bounce back in the opposite direction. If it was not profitable at all, we again expect a bounce back in the opposite direction. For Florida, they've been profitable for 6 out of the last 10 seasons. But half of those, 3, came after profitable against the spread season. So throw out that metric too. So what trends can we really look at for Florida? And they do have some trends worth noting. Under Will Muschamp as their head coach, in games played right after losing games straight up, Florida is 1-6 against the spread. So that might say something to the attitude or perhaps this coaching staff getting these guys up for the next game. They are just 3-7-1, so winning 30% when you throw out that push against the spread as double-digit home favorites. And in the last 8 such games, they're 1-7 against the spread, so very bad. Now, when it comes to Florida, in the theme that we have here is defying the typical numbers. Florida, the public betting is very sharp when it comes to Florida. Under Will Muschamp, Florida is 0-3 against the spread at home when they're getting less than 40% of the public betting with them. So the public knows what they're doing there. When they're away from the swamp under Will Muschamp, and at least 50% of the public betting is on them, they're 4-1 against the spread. So majority of the public, when they're on them, they're 80% against the spread when they're away from the swamp. Now, looking even beyond the Muschamp years, the last 10 years, they're 6-1 against the spread. That's 85.71% when they're getting at least 80% of the public betting at home. So once again, the public is very sharp when it comes to them. And in the past 10 years, when at least half of the public betting has been on Florida away, they are winning at 60%, 18-12-1. The bottom line is when it comes to against the spread and Florida, it does not pay to bet against the public. If anything, it pays to bet with the public on Florida.
Those are interesting numbers, Steve. Do you think those are predictive, or do you think they're more anomalous and just kind of fluky?
I think they're predictive because I personally went through and looked at all 10 of their seasons, and we try not to mention statistics, especially against the spread statistics that are not consistent or are not extreme. And those are some pretty consistent and extreme statistics.
Yeah.
So I do not think that is a fluke.
All right, so this seems like it's going to be shaping up to be kind of a mid-range season for Florida. You know, maybe not quite top 10, but definitely solidly top 25. Is that what you're seeing?
I think that we think about a 50% chance that Florida will be in the top 10. I think there is almost a 100% chance they're going to be in the top 20. So this is definitely a team, and we have to remember, as far as the public is concerned, this team was one game away from playing in the BCS National Championship last year. If it weren't for Notre Dame beating USC, if USC, I don't know, maybe had Matt Barkley in that game and they beat Notre Dame, it would have been Florida against Alabama. So this is a team that was absolutely at the top last year in the BCS. Now, when it comes to this year, you already mentioned Pinnacle has them 11th shortest odds. If you go to Bovada, they're the 8th shortest odds. They're at 20-1 at Bovada. And we like to follow our 60% rule, an article we wrote on SBR. And that is, there are 5 predictive criteria. The first one is, does the team have an upperclassman quarterback? Well, Florida is returning a junior quarterback in Jeff Driscoll. 11 out of 15 national champions, BCS national champions, have had junior quarterbacks. So they meet that first predictive criterion. The one thing I would note, though, is they had at this time last year, Jeff Driscoll was in a dead heat competition with Jacoby Brissett for that starting job. Jacoby Brissett has since transferred. So that has left Florida dangerously inexperienced behind Jeff Driscoll. And this is a team, at least from 2012, that allowed their quarterback to get hit often. They gave up 39 sacks. That was the 8th most in the country last year. And remember, Jeff Driscoll likes to run, and he's a pretty good runner. We think the offensive line will be improved this year, but given the fact that Driscoll likes to run, he was injured in 2012. We're a little worried for them that Jeff Driscoll will not be playing in all of their games this year, and that could be trouble at that quarterback position. The second criterion we look at for that 60% rule is, did they have a top 20 scoring defense the year prior? And the answer for Florida in 2012 was yes, they did. However, there are significant differences between that defense of 2012 and the defense that we're going to see in 2013. Namely, the 2012 defense, they returned 10 starters. This year, 2013, they returned just 5 defensive starters. Speaking of those that are gone from the defensive coordinator is gone. 5 of their top 6 tacklers are gone. More than 67% of their tackles for losses are gone. 4 out of their top 5 sack leaders are gone. 3 out of their top 4 interception leaders are gone. And that's particularly significant because Florida was excellent in that category. They were number 7 in 2012. So our conclusion about Florida's defense, that all-important category, scoring defense, is Florida should take a step back defensively this year. That could be a problem, but strictly by the numbers, they meet that second criterion. The third one is that preseason top 10 ranking. As we said, the AP hasn't come out yet. We think there's about a 50% chance that they're going to be in the top 10. We'll give them half a point in that predictive category. The fourth predictive category of 5 for that 60% rule is, do they play in the SEC? Of course, Florida does, so they meet that criterion. And finally, the last criterion is their coach needs to be that head coach at that same institution for 2 to 4 years. And Will Muschamp is entering his 3rd year as head coach at Florida. So they meet that predictive criterion, which means in total, for that 60% rule, these guys meet 4.5, so at least 4 of the 5 predictive criteria. They meet the 60% rule. However, because of our questions for them on defense this year and that quarterback situation behind Jeff Driscoll, I personally would not place a futures bet on Florida for the 2014 BCS National Championship.
All right. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a very interesting year at Florida. And as far as betting them, it's going to be very up and down week to week. We'll see how it turns out. Thanks, Steve.